My name is Caitlin, and I just turned 27 years old. Imagine this. You walk into a shiny dealership, the kind with polished floors, giant glass windows, and cars lined up like trophies. You see one that catches your eye, a sleek, modern, sporty-looking Honda Accord Sport. The price tag says $30,000. Sure, it's a lot of money, but you tell yourself, I work hard, I deserve this. And besides, it's just a loan, I can handle it. The salespeople smile at you, offer you free coffee, and make you feel like you're the most important customer of the day. You sit in the driver's seat, smell that brand new leather, and in that moment, your brain stops thinking logically. You don't calculate how much you'll pay every month. You don't check what the total cost will be over the years. All you know is that you feel good. You feel successful. And with a quick signature on a few papers, you drive home in your new ride, feeling like a winner. But here's the shocking truth. Just a few days later, you realize that your $30,000 dream car could actually cost you $60,000 by the time it's all paid off. Double the price, twice the burden, twice the regret. That's exactly what happened to my friend in California. She thought she was getting a reasonable deal on her new Honda Accord Sport. What she didn't realize is that the dealership and the bank had set her up with one of the worst possible loan agreements she could have signed. Let me break it down. The dealership offered her a loan with a 19% interest rate. Now, if you don't know much about loans, let me put it simply. That's sky high. It's the kind of interest rate you'd expect on a risky credit card, not on a car loan. Most people with decent credit scores can get loans at maybe 5%, sometimes even lower. But because my friend's credit score was low, the bank decided she was a high-risk borrower. And when you're labeled high risk, lenders don't try to help you. They punish you. They locked her into a 72-month loan, which is 6 years. Her monthly payment, around $877. Let that sink in. Almost $900 every single month for 6 years. When you add up those payments, the total comes out to over $60,000 for a car that was only worth $30,000. And here's where the real danger lies. She didn't even notice. In the heat of the moment, sitting in that dealership office, she didn't read every line of the contract. She didn't ask questions. She didn't stop to call a friend or a family member for advice. She just signed. The salespeople made it sound so easy. They probably said things like, "Don't worry, everyone finances cars this way," or "It's just a small monthly payment." But in reality, those small payments stacked up to a giant financial trap. Imagine the emotional crash. One moment, you're driving home in your brand new car, music blasting, feeling unstoppable. The next moment, you're sitting at your kitchen table, staring at the paperwork, realizing you've just committed to 6 years of massive payments. Payments that could crush your budget, wreck your savings, and keep you from affording anything else in life. And the scariest part, this happens to people all the time. Dealerships know how to play with numbers to make you think you're getting a good deal. They stretch out the loan term, so the monthly payment looks affordable. They don't talk about the total cost, just the monthly bite. But when you finally add it up, the truth hits you like a punch in the stomach. That's why I call this section the shocking truth, because the reality is brutal. A $30,000 car doesn't always cost $30,000. If you're not careful, it can cost you twice that. And my friend's story is living proof of how quickly excitement can turn into regret when you don't understand the fine print. She thought she had just bought herself freedom and happiness. Instead, she had unknowingly signed up for a $60,000 nightmare. It all started with a simple thought, I deserve something nice. My friend had been driving an older car for years. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't fast, and it definitely wasn't something she was proud of showing off. She'd been working hard, putting in long hours, and like many of us, she felt like it was finally time to reward herself. And what better way to reward yourself than with a brand new car? Something sporty, sleek, and stylish. Something that would make people turn their heads when you pulled into the parking lot. So, without much planning or research, she decided to head straight to a dealership. No long nights of comparing prices online. No checking her credit score. No sitting down with a calculator to figure out how much she could really afford. She just woke up one morning, made up her mind, and said, "Today, I'm buying a car." That's when the trouble began. The dealership she chose was everything you'd expect. Bright lights, shiny floors, and rows of new cars glistening under the California sun. It's the kind of place designed to make you feel excited and overwhelmed all at once. And trust me, car dealerships know exactly how to play with your emotions. Salespeople came rushing over the moment she stepped onto the lot. Big smiles, friendly voices, handshakes that felt like they'd known her for years. "What are you looking for today? We've got some amazing deals. Let's get you into something you'll love." And then she saw it. The Honda Accord Sport. It was priced at around $30,000. Not the cheapest car on the lot, but not the most expensive either. For her, it was the perfect balance between practical and stylish. It looked sleek, with its sharp edges and sporty design. Sitting inside, she felt an instant rush of excitement. The steering wheel felt perfect in her hands. The seats hugged her like they were made for her. And the new car smell. Oh, that smell sealed the deal. At that moment, logic went out the window. She wasn't thinking about numbers, monthly payments, or long-term consequences. She was thinking about how good it felt to finally have something she could show off. And that's when the sales team really went to work. They walked her into the office, sat her down in front of a stack of papers, and started talking fast. Payments, interest rates, terms. Things she didn't fully understand were explained in a way that sounded simple, harmless, even normal. "Most people finance their cars like this," they said. "It's only a few $100s a month." They reassured her. "You'll be fine. With your income, this is a smart choice." The truth, it wasn't a smart choice at all. But in that moment, with adrenaline pumping and excitement clouding her judgment, she didn't stop to ask the right questions. She didn't take a step back to say, "Wait, what's the total cost going to be after all these payments?" She didn't ask, "Is this interest rate normal?" She didn't even call a friend or family member to double check. Instead, she picked up the pen and signed her name on the dotted line. She thought she was walking out of the dealership a winner. She thought she had just secured her dream car. What she didn't realize was that those papers she signed weren't just giving her a car. They were also locking her into a dangerous financial trap. Because those numbers she glanced over in the rush of excitement, they weren't small details. They were the difference between a $30,000 car and a $60,000 nightmare. And the scariest part, she didn't realize it until it was already too late. Now here's where the nightmare really begins. After my friend picked out her shiny new Honda Accord Sport, the dealership didn't waste any time. They whisked her into a small office, sat her across the desk, and pulled out the loan paperwork. You know the scene. Papers stacked high, numbers printed in small fonts, and a salesperson with a big smile acting like this was all perfectly normal. They handed her the terms. 72 months. That's 6 years. 6 years of being chained to one payment, month after month. But the real shocker, the interest rate. They told her it would be 19%. Now, if you're not familiar with how car loans work, let me break this down. A normal, healthy interest rate for someone with good credit might be 3% to 5%. Even someone with decent or average credit could usually expect 6% to 8%. But 19%? That's sky high. That's the kind of rate credit card companies slap on you when you miss payments. It's basically a financial punishment. Why did she get such a terrible rate? One reason: her credit score was low. Banks see people with low credit as risky. To them, it doesn't matter that you're trying your best or that you just wanted a decent car. They look at your score, and if it's not good, they hit you with high interest rates. It's their way of saying, if you want the loan, you're going to pay for it, literally. So there she was, looking at a car that cost about $30,000. But with this interest rate, the math turned ugly. Her monthly payment, around $827. Think about that for a second. $827 every single month for 6 years straight. That's almost the same as a second rent payment in some places. Now let's do the math together. 870 hours x 12 months. About $10,524 a year. Multiply that by 6 years. Over $63,000. Yes, you heard that right. A car that cost $30,000 was about to drain over $60,000 from her wallet. Almost double. And the worst part? At the end of those 6 years, that Honda Accord wouldn't even be worth anywhere near $30,000 anymore. Cars lose value the second you drive them off the lot. After 6 years, it might be worth $10,000 or less. That means she'd pay $60,000 for something that's only worth a fraction of what she spent. That's what makes this loan so scary. It's a trap. It's designed so that you feel like you can afford it in the short term, but in reality, it's slowly draining you dry. But here's the kicker. She didn't realize any of this when she signed. When she first heard $870 a month, she thought, okay, it's high, but I think I can manage it. The dealership made it sound almost reasonable. They didn't emphasize the interest rate. They didn't show her the total cost she'd pay over time. They just circled that monthly number and kept repeating, you can handle this. It's not that bad. This is the classic trick dealerships use. They focus on the monthly payment instead of the total loan amount. Why? Because monthly payments sound smaller. $877 doesn't sound as terrifying as $63,000. But it's the same thing. It's just stretched out to hide the true cost. And in that moment, under pressure, excited about the car, and without doing the math herself, she believed them. She thought she could make it work. But the truth is, this loan was nothing short of financial quicksand. The more you struggle to keep up with payments, the deeper you sink. And once you're in, it's nearly impossible to climb out. That's why I call this part of her story the scary loan details. Because behind the shiny car and the friendly salespeople, what she really signed up for was a 6-year, $60,000 trap. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the biggest mistakes don't come from what you don't know, but from what you don't ask. And that's exactly what happened to my friend. She signed the deal, just like that. No second opinion, no questions. No calls to a friend or family member for advice. Just her, a pen, and a signature that would tie her down for the next 6 years. Why did she do it? The truth is, she was caught up in the moment. Buying a car is emotional. You see the shiny vehicle. You imagine yourself driving it. You feel that rush of excitement. And dealerships, they know how to push that feeling. They don't want you to slow down. They don't want you to think too hard. They want you to sign while your head is still spinning with the smell of new leather. So she signed. But here's the kicker. In California, there's something called a 2-day contract cancellation option for used cars. It's basically a little safety net. If you buy a car and wake up the next day with regret, you have 2 days to change your mind. 2 days to take the car back and cancel the deal. Sounds great, right? But here's the problem. It only works if you choose that option up front. You actually have to pay extra for it when you're signing. It's not automatic. And my friend, she didn't take it. Whether the dealership brushed past it quickly, or whether she didn't even notice, we'll never know. But what we do know is that once her signature was on that paper, without that cancellation option, she was trapped. There was no easy escape. It's like walking into a cage, locking the door behind you, and then realizing too late that you don't have the key. Now, here's the part that makes it worse. She didn't tell anyone about the purchase. Not her family, not her friends, not even me until afterward. She kept it to herself. Maybe because she was excited. Maybe because she wanted to prove she could handle it on her own. But by keeping it a secret, she cut herself off from the one thing that could have saved her. Advice. If she had just called one person, anyone before signing, they could have told her, "Don't do it. That interest rate is way too high. Stop and think about the total cost." Ask about the cancellation option. But she didn't. She trusted the dealership. She trusted the sales pitch. And she trusted her own excitement more than common sense. And honestly, I can't even blame her too much. Because how many of us have been in that same position? We get caught up in the thrill of the moment, convinced that we've earned it, that it's fine, that the details don't matter. Then later, reality hits us like a brick wall. The sad truth is that dealerships thrive on moments like this. They know most people won't ask enough questions. They know people will be too embarrassed to admit they don't understand all the terms. And they know once that pen hits the paper, the customer is stuck. That's why I call this part of the story the big mistake. Not just the mistake of signing a bad loan, but the mistake of going in blind. The mistake of not asking for advice. The mistake of not slowing down. Because in the end, this wasn't just about buying a car. It was about making a life-changing financial decision in a rush, without the safety net, without support, and without realizing just how big of a trap she was walking into. By the time she realized what she had done, it was too late. The papers were signed, the deal was locked, and she was staring down the barrel of a $60,000 mistake. Just when it seemed like everything was sealed, when my friend had accepted that she was trapped in a 6-year, $60,000 nightmare, something unexpected happened. The dealership called her back and explained that the deal wasn't completely final yet. Yes, she had signed the papers. Yes, she had driven the car off the lot. But there was still one giant hurdle standing between her and that terrifying loan. The bank still had to approve it. See, here's how it works. A dealership doesn't usually lend you the money directly. Instead, they set up the loan through a bank or a finance company. And those banks don't just hand out tens of thousands of dollars without checking a few things first. They need proof of income, proof of residency, proof that you can actually afford to make those massive $877 payments for 6 years straight. And here's where the twist came in. My friend hadn't turned in any of those documents yet. No pay stubs, no residency proof, nothing, which meant that, technically, the deal was still hanging in limbo. If she didn't provide that paperwork, the bank could flat out deny the loan. And if the bank denied the loan, the dealership would have no choice but to take the car back. For the first time since she signed that contract, there was a tiny spark of hope. Imagine the relief she felt. For days, she had been drowning in panic, realizing she had signed her way into a financial disaster. She hadn't slept properly. She hadn't eaten properly. Every time she looked at the car in the driveway, it didn't feel like a prize anymore. It felt like a ticking time bomb. And now, suddenly, here was a loophole, a chance, a door that was cracked open just enough for her to maybe slip through. But of course, nothing with a dealership is ever that simple. When she went back to talk to them, the salespeople tried to act like it wasn't a big deal. "Don't worry," they said. "Just bring in the documents and everything will be fine." They wanted her to hand over those pay stubs. They wanted her to prove her residency. They wanted that bank approval locked in. Because once that happened, the trap would slam shut. For good. But my friend, she hesitated. For the first time since this whole mess started, she began to think clearly. What if she just didn't give them the documents? What if she walked away? Of course, that wasn't easy to do. The dealership wasn't about to let go of a $60,000 deal without a fight. They used pressure tactics, guilt trips, and even sweetened offers to keep her on the hook. They acted like it was just a formality, like she was overthinking. But in reality, she had stumbled onto the one thing that could actually save her. It was like standing in the middle of a storm and suddenly spotting a lifeboat. For the first time, she wasn't powerless. For the first time, she had a choice: give the bank what they wanted and lock herself into years of debt, or refuse and watch the whole rotten deal collapse. And let me tell you, that tiny ray of hope was everything. It gave her the courage to stop listening to the dealership's fast talk. It gave her the clarity to slow down and actually think. It wasn't a guarantee yet, but it was something. And sometimes, in situations like this, that small glimmer of hope is all you need to start fighting back. Of course, the dealership wasn't about to let my friend walk away so easily. Remember, car dealerships don't make their biggest profits from the sticker price of the car. They make it from financing. Those loans, those interest rates, those little adjustments that stretch your payments out for years. And my friend's deal, a $30,000 car turning into a $60,000 payout. That was a goldmine for them. There was no way they were letting go of that without a fight. So, when they sensed she was hesitating, they pulled out one of their oldest tricks, the fake, better deal. Here's what they said. "Look, we understand the monthly payment feels a little high at $877. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable. So, we've crunched the numbers, and we can do you a favor. Instead of $877 for 72 months, how about $856 for 75 months? It'll lower your payment and make it easier for you." Now, on the surface, that sounds like a win, right? Who wouldn't want to pay less per month? A smaller bill sounds comforting. But here's the reality. They weren't really helping her at all. Let's break it down. They shaved just $21 off the monthly payment. That's barely enough to cover dinner at a cheap restaurant. And to make that happen, they added 3 more months to the loan. That's 3 extra months of debt. 3 more months of interest. 3 more months of her life tied to a car that was already drowning her financially. When you add it all up, the total cost was basically the same ridiculous number, tens of thousands of dollars more than the car was worth. They didn't save her money. They just rewrapped the trap in prettier paper. And this is a classic dealership trick. They know most people don't sit down and calculate the total cost of the loan. Instead, they focus only on the monthly payment. They make it smaller, and suddenly the customer feels like they're winning. It's psychology. People think, if I can afford this number each month, I'm fine. But what they don't realize is that they're paying thousands more in the long run. It's like stretching out a bill so thin that you don't notice how heavy it really is. But here's the genius and evil part. By making the monthly payment look better, dealerships make customers feel like the dealership is on their side, like they're working together, like they're giving you a break. In reality, they're just making sure you stay hooked. And let's be honest, when you're sitting in that office, overwhelmed by paperwork and salespeople talking fast, it's easy to fall for it. Most people do. They hear lower monthly payment and they stop thinking about the big picture. They just sign, relieved that the bill looks a little smaller, not realizing they've just signed themselves into even more debt. Luckily, my friend was starting to see through the illusion. She had already been spooked by how high her payment was. She had already felt the weight of that $877. So when they dangled the $856 offer in front of her, she paused. She thought, wait a second, it's basically the same payment, just for longer. I'm not actually saving money. I'm just stretching out the pain. And that realization was huge. For the first time, she recognized the game dealerships play, the smoke and mirrors, the psychological tricks, the way they disguise bad deals as better deals. Because at the end of the day, there was nothing better about that offer. It was just more debt, more interest, more time. The truth is, car dealerships are masters at this kind of manipulation. They know how to distract you with shiny numbers, how to make you feel comfortable while secretly tightening the noose. And if you're not careful, you'll leave their office thinking you won, when really, you've just lost more than you can imagine. My friend nearly fell for it. But this time, something inside her said no. And that tiny moment of clarity, the decision not to fall for the better deal, was what saved her from sinking even deeper into the trap. This time, my friend wasn't fooled. When the dealership came back waving that so-called better deal, something clicked inside her. She realized, for the first time, just how deep the trap was. That $877 payment had already scared her, but now, seeing how casually they tried to fix it by stretching it into an even longer loan, she knew this wasn't a deal. It was a prison sentence. She didn't even want the car anymore. The excitement, the thrill of having something sporty and shiny, it was gone, replaced with dread, fear, and the weight of numbers she couldn't ignore. The car no longer represented freedom or success. It was now just a symbol of a financial mistake that could ruin her life. And this time, instead of keeping it all to herself, she did something different. She started asking questions. She reached out to a couple of friends and co-workers, nervously explaining what had happened. The reaction was immediate. Wait, you're paying how much? For a Honda Accord? That's robbery. For the first time, she heard the truth spoken out loud. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't overreacting. This really was a terrible deal, and the dealership was taking advantage of her. Her co-workers, who had more experience with loans and financing, started breaking it down for her. They showed her how much interest she'd be paying, how the dealership made their money, and why banks love customers who don't ask questions. And slowly, the fog began to lift. She started to see the bigger picture, the psychology, the manipulation, the pressure tactics. And then came the good news, the little piece of information that gave her hope. The loan hadn't been fully approved yet. Remember, the dealership had handed her the keys, but the bank still needed to sign off. They wanted her pay stubs. They wanted proof of her residency. And until those documents were provided and accepted, the loan wasn't final. That meant she had a chance. It was like realizing that even though she'd stepped into quicksand, she hadn't sunk all the way down yet. There was still a rope hanging nearby. If she grabbed it fast enough, she might pull herself out before it was too late. This was her turning point. Instead of being scared and silent, she started to strategize. She thought about what would happen if she simply refused to give the bank the documents. No pay stubs, no residency proof, no loan, and no loan meant the deal couldn't go through. And if the deal couldn't go through, the dealership would have no choice but to take the car back. For the first time since signing those papers, she felt a spark of control return. It wasn't much, but it was something, a way out of a nightmare she thought she was trapped in forever. But here's the thing about turning points. They don't come easy. They come with doubt, with fear, with second guessing. She kept asking herself, what if they come after me? What if I'm forced to keep it anyway? What if I ruin my credit even more? All those questions weighed on her. But now, unlike before, she wasn't making decisions alone. She had people around her, friends, co-workers, telling her she had options, giving her the courage she needed to push back. And that's the key. Most people stay trapped in bad deals because they never ask for help. They let shame and fear keep them quiet. But once she broke that silence, once she started talking, she realized she wasn't as powerless as she thought. This was the moment when everything shifted. The dealership wasn't holding all the cards anymore. She had discovered the one thing they didn't want her to know. She could walk away. So, what's the takeaway here? At first glance, buying a car seems simple. You see the price on the windshield, $30,000 in this case, and you think, okay, I can handle that. But what most people don't realize is that the sticker price is only the beginning of the story. The real danger hides in the fine print, the loan terms, the interest rate, the fees, the length of the contract. That's where dealerships make their money, and that's where people fall into traps. My friend learned this the hard way. She walked into that dealership, believing she was buying a $30,000 car, but by the time the numbers were put on paper, that deal was worth more than $60,000. Double the cost, without a single upgrade, without a luxury badge, without anything but a clever financing game designed to drain her wallet. And here's the scary part. Her story isn't rare. It happens every single day. Car dealerships thrive on two things: impulse and ignorance. They know people get emotional about cars. A shiny hood, a powerful engine, a sporty look. Those things cloud judgment fast. And once you've fallen in love with the car, you'll sign almost anything to drive it home. They also know that many buyers don't fully understand loan terms. They hear $800 a month and focus only on whether they can afford that monthly payment right now, not realizing that over time, those payments snowball into financial disaster. That's why the first lesson here is this: never rush. If you ever find yourself at a dealership, slow down. Walk away if you need to. No car is worth signing your life away in a 5-minute sales pitch. Take the contract home. Show it to someone you trust. Or at least sleep on it before you commit. Because once that pen hits the paper, your options shrink fast. The second lesson: always read everything. Contracts are designed to confuse you. Long paragraphs, tiny fonts, complicated terms. It's all intentional. They don't want you to understand it, because the less you understand, the easier it is for them to make money off you. If something doesn't make sense, stop and ask. If they try to rush you or brush off your questions, that's your red flag. And the third lesson, the most important one: never let a dealership pressure you. Pressure is their favorite tactic. They'll tell you the deal is only good today. They'll warn you that another buyer is interested. They'll act like they're doing you a favor by giving you special approval. But remember, if a deal feels wrong, it probably is. And there will always be another car, another dealership, another option. Don't let the fear of missing out push you into a 6-year financial nightmare. My friend's story is a painful reminder of all this. She admits now that she should have slowed down, should have asked for help, should have walked away the moment the numbers didn't add up. But she didn't. And for a while, she paid the price in stress, regret, and sleepless nights. The good news: she caught herself before it was too late. She realized the trap she had walked into and started pulling back before the loan was finalized. And though it was a messy, stressful process, It taught her a lesson she'll never forget. And that's the silver lining. Sometimes the hardest mistakes are the ones that teach us the most. Now she's far more careful. She reads everything she signs. She talks to people before making big decisions. She knows that credit score matters, interest rates matter, and that walking away is always an option. That $30,000 car may have turned into a $60,000 nightmare, but in the end, it became a $0 car with a priceless lesson attached. And that lesson: protect yourself. Don't rush. Don't let excitement blind you. A car is supposed to bring freedom, not debt, not stress, and definitely not regret.